Okay, everyone, I think we'll begin now. So good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you are. Please allow me to start by welcoming you all and ask my colleague Maija to start the recording. My name is Gareth James Lloyd and I'm a Senior Advisor at UNEP-DHI Partnership, and we're a United Nations collaboration centre in the area of freshwater and environment. I'll be the facilitator of this webinar today with technical support from Maija Bertule, also of the UNEP-DHI Partnership. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the partnership, who we are and what we do, please check out our website, and we're going to make the web address available at the end of this webinar. And I should also remember to mention that this series is developed in close collaboration with the Academy at DHI. The aim of this webinar series is to give an insight into the role that innovation and innovative approaches can play in supporting the achievement of the water-related Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs as they're abbreviated to. And as you're going to hear, in all but a few cases, it's not always about reinventing the wheel, but more about using the SDGs as an opportunity to realign and improve what we're already doing. And that's done by utilizing new knowledge and tools. Throughout the series, the presenters, who are going to come from a broad range of expert organizations, will address a range of aspects from water education, emerging possibilities in water data collection, to technical tools and planning with nature, etc. This first webinar will focus on the role that the SDGs will play in shaping water management practices in the decades to come. And it's going to help by setting the scene for the other webinar in the series to follow, by covering SDG processes and introducing planned monitoring and the role of innovations in water monitoring practices. And let me just move to the next slide. Yes, on the agenda today we have Joakim Harlin of UNEP and Water, who's going to be giving an overview of water in the 2030 agenda. Unfortunately, Joakim couldn't be with us for this webinar at this timing, so we have a recording of him. But if you have any questions, then please feel free to send them to us, because Peter, who's covering the next presentation, is quite well briefed on that work. And Peter Koefoed Bjornsen, who's he's the director of the UNEP-DHI Partnership. He's going to be covering approaching the SDGs through innovation in water management. The final presentation will be from Henrik, Larsen and myself, and that will be looking a little bit more closely into an ongoing monitoring and evaluation or reporting effort, and looking at how new innovation is being brought into play there, as well as how SDGs are being incorporated into that work. Each presentation is going to last about 10 minutes or so, with enough time for 1 or 2 questions immediately after each one. There should also be some time to take some additional questions at the end, and in the panel on the right of your screen you should be able to see a box for submitting questions. There it is, look just over on the right there. So if you click on that, you can type in your questions and send them in to Maija and myself, and we'll be gathering those together and framing them and sending them on to each of the presenters. So please make good use of that. All of the water webinars in this series are being recorded and will be made publicly available on YouTube, and also of course through our UNEP-DHI website. But without further ado, I will pass the word back to Maija, or rather Joakim, and she will make Joakim the presenter.
Welcome to this webinar on SDGs and Water. My name is Joakim Harlin. I am the Chief of Freshwater Ecosystems Unit at UNEP Head Office in Nairobi. I'm also serving as the Vice Chair of UN-Water, and I will today walk you through in what is now called the Agenda 2030 process. This was quite a comprehensive process. In fact, as you might recall, it was coined the post-2015 development agenda earlier on. The whole process kicked off after the Rio+20 summit, and which in turn led to quite a unprecedented amount of consultations on many fronts, and parallel efforts trying to collect information and help to shape the agenda. And I think most prominent in that process is perhaps what was called the Open Working Group on basically a subset of the General Assembly, and they worked through a number of consultations and prepared a suggestion, a document that was then tabled at the General Assembly and then fed into what was then the UN Summit on the post-2015 development agenda, which was then held in September last year. And that's where what is now called 2030 was adopted. So the outcome document from this high-level summit is called Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And it's compared to the MDG agenda, this is substantially much larger. It includes now 17 Sustainable Development Goals with 169 targets linked to these goals. And thankfully, we also have a goal in SDG number 6, which has 6 targets plus 2 targets. But that doesn't mean to say that water is only included here in the dedicated water goal. Water is mentioned actually throughout Agenda 2030, and it also has explicit mention in some of the other goals and targets, as I've listed here on this slide. So you could say that there, and in addition to that, there's also indirect links to another 8 SDGs. So it's very much integrated into the agenda itself. So we can ask ourselves, what's really different about this agenda? And and this is really different, you could say, in comparison to what we had earlier, which was the Millennium Development Goals. I think, as I alluded to earlier, one major difference is that we have a very strong ownership, and this ownership comes about because of the lengthy consultative process that led to the agenda itself, and that consultative process and ownership leads then to an inclusiveness also. So it's not only an agenda for developing countries; it's an agenda also for the developed world in the north, and it has also to reach out and leave no one behind. So that's also, you could say, an additional element now to sustainable development that it is, and it talks about relationships and takes a human rights based approach throughout. So now that it has been adopted and it's agreed upon through such a rigorous process, it carries a much larger legitimacy because it's agreed by consensus. It came through this extensive process of the Open Working Group, and it also went through the intergovernmental negotiation process led by the General Assembly. What's important here also to note is that it's a very integrated agenda. It tries to balance all dimensions of sustainable development, and in turn, of course, this requires quite a large need of coordination, and this is something that we'll have to pay special attention to in the implementation. So if we just take a little overview of the goals themselves, and you will recognize here that there's 17 goals, and you recognize that several of them are direct continuations of the MDG goals. For example, the first one here, ending poverty in all its forms, and goal 2, which is about hunger and food security. But we also see that we have goals related to healthy lives, equity, and lifelong learning. Let's quickly browse through. We see that there is now a goal on energy, sustainable and modern energy for all, which was not part of the MDG agenda. And we're also addressing the whole aspect of sustainable economic growth and employment and decent work. An important also element that has been added on. We have a goal 9, which is about infrastructure, and a goal 10, which is about reducing inequality within and among countries. Very interesting that that has been captured as a specific goal. We have another goal 11 on human settlements, and goal 12, which is about consumption and production patterns, making them sustainable. There's a link to the climate agenda in goal 13, and on goal 14 we have the marine aspects of oceans and seas, which is of course also clearly linked to the water goal itself, as fresh water meets the oceans. Then goal 15, which is again also very interrelated to the goal 6 on water, is about terrestrial ecosystems, and where we also have water-related ecosystems on land. Goal 16 is about peaceful and inclusive societies and justice, and then we have goal 17, which is all about the means of implementation. So we have means of implementation targets also factored in under the individual goals, and we'll look at how that comes into goal 6 now. So a bit more at the goals. We also have to ask us, and targets of the water goal, we have to ask about how do we now monitor and report this. So in terms of process, the General Assembly decided not to stop at the target level and not go into the more technical aspects of indicators monitoring and reporting. And that task was given to the Statistical Commission. And the Statistical Commission in turn also formed not an open working group but an interagency expert group, which is actually still active and working. And they prepared a final list of indicators that were adopted by the Statistical Commission here in their meeting on the 8th to 11th of March. So this is the most, you could say, recent adoption related to the SDGs that we have. So this means that the indicators are adopted, but there's still some work on them. But let's have first a look and see what they look like for water. So if we look at goal 6, and the first target of goal 6 is very much a continuation of what we had in the MDGs related to the access of safe drinking water. The addition that comes now is that it's about equitable access, and it's for everyone. So it's not halving the proportions, and it's not just improved, but it's safe. So this is an expansion, and the indicator there is related to the proportion of population using safely managed drinking water services. The next target is related to sanitation. So this again is also builds on the MDG target and expands. It expands now also again to reach everybody, and it's also about being safe, safely managed, and it's also including hygiene. The indicator there is about, so it's the same topics but expanded. Now 6.3 is, you could say, a new topic that has now been introduced, and this is a topic about improving water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping, and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals and materials, and halving the proportion of untreated wastewater, and substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse. So that is quite a lot. There are 2 indicators that have been monitored and captured the achievement of this target, and the first one is the proportion of wastewater safely treated, and the second, 6.3.2, is the proportion of bodies of water with good ambient water quality. And for indicator 6.3.2, UNEP is a custodian agency. Target 6.4 is about improving the efficiency of water use across all sectors. And we have 2 indicators there. The first one is the change in water use efficiency over time, looking then at 4 main sectors, and water use sectors, agriculture being maybe the most important and main water user. 642, which is a bit of a continuation of what we had in the MDG agenda, the level of water stress, here expressed as freshwater withdrawal as a proportion of available freshwater resources, and this is taking environmental water requirements into account, so that clearly a UNEP interest in 642. 6.5 is about advancing integrated water resources management at all levels, including through transboundary cooperation. Now that was not part of the MDG agenda, but it was adopted as a goal, you could say, by the Johannesburg Plan of Implementation, and this is now taken forward as an integral part of Agenda 2030. So the first indicator there is the degree of integrated water resource. The UNEP is the custodian agency for that indicator. And then for the transboundary component, we have the proportion of transboundary basin area with an operational arrangement for water cooperation. Finally, we then have target 6.6, and this is about protecting and restoring water-related ecosystems. And for that target, there is an indicator expressed as change in the extent of water-related ecosystems over time. And for this indicator, UNEP is the custodian agency. So in addition to these more technical targets, we then have 2 targets, 6A and 6B, and that's how it is in Agenda 2030, that they have these letters A and B for the ones that are more related to the implementation side. And 6A is looking at international cooperation and capacity building to support developing countries. The indicator that has been formulated there is trying to capture the amount of water and sanitation related official development assistance that is part of a government coordinating spending plan. 6B is addressing participation, and the indicator that has been formulated is proportion of local administrative units with established and operational policies and procedures for participation of local communities in water and sanitation management. And here UNEP is one of the custodian agencies together with WHO, and the reason being that if we look at the IWRM target and indicator, we are collecting quite a bit of information on the participation element, and that together with the UN Water Glass initiative, which is coordinated under WHO, will help to populate and report on this indicator towards 6B. Thank you very much, and I hope that you will have a very good discussion about this now in the webinar.
Yeah, and many thanks to Joakim for that. While we're about to start talking, I think I'll ask Maija to pass the presentation over to Peter, please. And Peter, just before you get started, there were a couple of questions about Joakim's presentation that I'd like to ask you, please. So, yeah, your presentation looks good. If I could ask you to just unmute your mic, I'll ask you a couple of questions, please.
I think I'm unmuted now. Yes.
Yeah,
hello.
There you are. Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining us. A couple of questions for you regarding Joakim's presentation. As mentioned earlier, I think you've been involved in this work, so you're well qualified to respond to these. Please could you elaborate a little on the coming milestones for the global monitoring and reporting system?
Thanks. Yeah, let me try to reply to that. So the SDG period is already running from, it was adopted in 2015 and with an end date in 2030. So the establishment of a baseline for the monitoring is quite pressing, and the UN Statistical Commission has decided that the baseline should be ready by 2018 with data collected in 2017, so that's already next year. And then we expect, we're not quite sure, but we expect that there will be reporting like every 4 or 5 years or so throughout the SDG period. So those are the milestones for monitoring the progress towards achieving the SDGs towards 2030.
Great. And how will those reporting baselines that you mentioned be established by 2018?
Yeah, so this is, I will get into that in my presentation also. So maybe we should just wait for that as a response, and then you can get back if it wasn't clear enough.
Okay, well, without further ado, Peter, I think I'll mute my microphone and let you get on with your presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, yeah, which really comes in continuation of what Joakim told us about the background for the 2030 agenda. So just to start off where Joakim concluded, under the dedicated goal, Sustainable Development Goal for water, SDG 6, there are these 6+2 targets and a total of 11 indicators to cover them. And it's really only the indicators for 6.1 and 6.2, so water and sanitation, which are already established indicators from the Millennium Development Goals. So the rest of them, the 9 remaining ones, are actually new indicators. For the entire 2030 agenda, it comes to about 250 indicators that have been approved by the Statistical Commission. So especially for small countries or fragile states, this is going to be quite a challenge to establish monitoring and reporting mechanisms for that large number of indicators. So we have some already established mechanisms, which Joakim also briefly mentioned, that for 6.1 and 6.2 indeed there is a joint monitoring program which has been running for the past 15 years also, and for the 2 additional targets on financing and local participation, we have the global analysis and assessment of sanitation and drinking water, abbreviated GLASS, which has been run by WHO, which can support that. But for the 4 new substantive targets, 6.3 to 6.6, there isn't in fact any reporting and monitoring mechanism established, and even the indicators also have had to be developed. So UN Water, as the umbrella organization for the many UN entities working in the field of water, has launched an initiative called GEMI, Global Enhanced or Expanded Monitoring Initiative, with funding from the Swiss Development Corporation to cover that gap. So over the coming years, GEMI will try to support countries in establishing monitoring and reporting mechanisms for these new targets. And the participating agencies are WHO, UNICEF, Habitat, FAO, UNEP, UNESCO, and WMO. And so far, the agencies have made some awareness material and also worked on establishing the draft methodologies for the indicators that have now been approved by the Statistics Commission. So these draft method guidelines will now be tested in 6 selected countries, which are listed here: Uganda, Senegal, Peru, Jordan, Bangladesh, and the Netherlands, because the monitoring and reporting is going to cover all countries, and that will take place over the coming few months. And based on the experiences from that, we will then adjust the indicator guidelines as needed and roll them out to basically all countries, but at least a large number of countries in next year in 2017, with the aim of meeting the need for baseline reporting by 2018. So this is quite a big task, and I'll just go into 3 of the indicators listed previously, just to give an idea also of what the potential for innovative approaches are. So starting first with the indicator for ambient water quality, which is called indicator 632, so it supports target 6.3 on wastewater and water quality. That indicator is proposed to be based on the measurements of 5 distinct parameters, which are dissolved oxygen, which is an overall parameter that describes the health of especially standing waters, the conductivity or salinity, which is an indicator of salinization of groundwater, especially then coliform bacteria, which links to the wastewater problem, and dissolved nitrogen and phosphorus to cover also the diffusive pollution from agriculture. So these 5 core parameters are only the starting point, and countries can decide to add other parameters as they feel fit. Now, based on measurements of these parameters and established threshold values for what would represent good status for these parameters, you can calculate a national index either as the percentage of the measuring stations that meet the criteria for good status, or a more advanced calculation of a proximity to target index. And this will all be based on the existing GEMS Water and GEMS Stat initiative, which is hosted by the United Nations Environment Programme, which has already over many years established measurements of these parameters for a number of countries, and so the system will build on that. But obviously countries are at very different levels with this monitoring, and it can be quite a burden also to establish conventional monitoring programs for that. So one possibility is to build on innovative technologies that would allow citizens also to participate, citizens or NGOs to participate in the monitoring. And the photos here show a gadget that you can click on the backside of a smartphone, which will basically turn it into a spectrometer, which used to be a huge instrument and very costly instrument, and this is a matter of maybe $10 to $50, which would then allow individuals to measure water quality in the field. And the lower left graph just shows the increasing penetration of smartphones in various subregions of Africa and the coverage in Africa. So this is something that's developing very fast, that many people will have access to smartphones and would actually, with these small additional equipment, be able to participate in monitoring. Now, so the technology will be there in a few years. So it's a matter of organizing this, how to organize this, such a reporting, and also how to assure the quality of the reporting, which can be done in various ways, like we know from Wikipedia, for example, which is also a source based on many contributions. So that's one example where innovation could really help boost the monitoring and reporting for that indicator. Another example is the indicator for 642, which is the water stress, or the indicator for sustainable withdrawals, that total withdrawals of water are kept within sustainable limits. The metrics that go into that that indicator are the total water withdrawals, then the total renewable water resources, and the environmental water requirements. So the stress is defined as the water withdrawals divided by the totally available water resources minus the requirement for ecosystems. And that indicator is supposed to be based on Aquastat, which is run by the FAO, and has also been in operation for many years with these measurements reported by countries from many countries, but also with large gaps. And especially, I mean, one weak point of that data set is exactly the water requirements from ecosystems. So traditionally, that has been set at a fixed percentage of the total water resources available. Could be 10% or 20%, but obviously that will vary a lot, and that's an area where there's indeed a need to develop better methodologies for that. So the International Water Management Institute, IMI, has started to develop such data, and this is a snapshot from their data portal where you can also download country data based on a modeling approach, which also takes into consideration the land cover and the specific conditions for each of the river basins. So this is a map that shows that the water requirements from natural ecosystems can actually vary quite a lot geographically. So again, a need for more sophisticated approaches. And finally, I would mention the indicator for target 6.6, which is to protect and restore water-related ecosystems. And the indicator proposed here and adopted is the change in ecosystem extent. Now, originally that was thought to be confined mainly to wetlands area. But it has been expanded to cover other types of water-related ecosystems, such as open waters like lakes and reservoirs and rivers and estuaries also, and groundwater, and also to expand the concept of extent from just the spatial extent to also cover some qualitative aspects. So again, here there is a need for developing methodologies for that and for innovative approaches. For the spatial extent, countries are supposed to report under the Ramsar Convention, but also that reporting is not perfect. So one alternative to that would be to use Earth observation for that, and there are several initiatives. This Globe Wetland, which is now being developed for all of Africa, is a collaboration between the European Space Agency and the Ramsar Convention, and one example of what can be done. There's over the coming years there's going to be a massive expanse of the data which would be brought down from the Sentinel launched by the European Space Agency, the American Space Agency and the Japanese Space Agencies. So there would be lots of data coming, and it's a matter of how to utilize that and bring it out to the countries. So these were some examples of where innovative approaches can help with the monitoring and reporting for the SDGs, but really that's just the top of the pyramid, as I've tried to illustrate here, that the monitoring of course is needed to track the progress towards achieving the targets, and without that monitoring the targets will kind of glide off the agenda and the attention. So that's really important. But apart from that reporting to the UN, it's also important for the countries to have data and knowledge to guide their decisions and have a diagnostic tool for their water resource management. So then the next layer of the pyramid is the capacity development and the technology transfer, which is needed to countries to be able to address the challenges in the SDG targets, and finally at the bottom the investments that would be needed, for example, to close the gap to access to water and sanitation, to ensure water quality and increase water efficiency and protect ecosystems. So I've indicated to the right that maybe the monitoring is at a total cost that amounts to several millions of dollars. The capacity development would increase to billions of dollars, whereas the investments would probably be in terms of trillions of dollars needed over the next 15 years. So both the monitoring and the capacity development are very much needed to guide that investment process. And over the years, over the coming webinars in this series, we'll touch upon some of the innovative aspects also of the investments in terms of green infrastructure and the capacity development. But I thought it was good to start with the monitoring here because it's, after all, probably the least challenging of these three. So I think I'll stop here, and then I'll be happy to take additional questions. Back to you, Gareth.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. That was a great introduction and good for setting the scene. Also, with monitoring as the starting point for efforts. We've had some questions come in for you. You were actually very good at preempting them with your slides. So you've covered quite a few as you went along. But we have one here, which is, will GEMI cover all countries? Could you say a few words on that, please?
Thanks. Yes, in principle, it should. There's a limitation of the available resources, of course, but the plan is to now test it in this very limited number of countries, and then based on that, make a major rollout to all countries, and that would have to be based on a large-scale approach with regional training and capacity building, and probably also with online training material like such as webinars like this.
Great, and the next question comes in three parts actually. It says, Peter, can you confirm that the baseline data date is 2017? I think you said 18. And then the next part is how can long-term changes be assessed from this date? And in relation to that, is there not a possibility for more historical baseline dates?
Right. Yeah. So the UN system has asked for a first reporting in 2018 based on data from 2017. So that will establish the baseline, and then with repeated reporting over the SDG period, it would then be possible to track progress and also progress towards the achievement of the actual targets that have been set in the 2030 agenda. Would it be possible to go back to earlier baselines? Yes, absolutely. In the analysis, that would be very helpful, and for some of these indicators, we would be able to track back. For example, for the wetlands extent, it's difficult to see the difference over 5 years. So it will be very helpful to go back, and fortunately, we will be able to do that.
Thanks, Peter. One last quick question. How will national reporting be aggregated at the global level? Just briefly, if you could.
Yeah, right. So the formal reporting line is that it's the national statistical offices who have the overall responsibility for the SDG reporting. So basically all these 250 indicators should somehow be assembled by national statistical offices and then reported back. In reality, probably in many cases the statistical offices would not have the specific technical expertise required to do this monitoring, so it would be delegated to specialized authorities in the countries, for example the water ministries for the SDG 6, and the GEMI project and the UN water system would assist with the reporting of the water-related indicators also, and make sure that there would be an analysis of the water-related indicators. So it's parallel.
Yeah. Many thanks for that, Peter. If I could now ask you to mute your microphone, we'll move on to the final part of the webinar, more or less. Thanks. And this is the presentation on the African water sector monitoring and evaluation project. In an ideal world, we would have had Henrik Larsen here today to take the lead on this presentation. However, as I speak, he's helping to facilitate a workshop in Nairobi on just this topic. So I'm going to do my best to do this initiative justice in his absence. So let me give you a little bit of background. In Africa, as elsewhere, there's a host of political commitments made over time on aspects of water resources, development, management and use. For this initiative, we're supporting AMCOW, or the African Ministers' Council on Water, in looking at pan-African commitments and international commitments of relevance, such as the Sustainable Development Goals. A well-known issue in the African context is the weakness of monitoring and reporting systems, and this is widely recognized as a critical constraint for making informed decisions, of course. So while the issue of water data, information and management, etc., is nothing new, what gave particular impetus to this current focus on monitoring and evaluation in Africa was the landmark Sharm el-Sheikh commitments of 2008. It was in Sharm that the African Union heads of state and government specifically called on AMCOW, the African Ministers' Council on Water, to report annually to the summit on the state of the continent's water resources. And this decision provided or demonstrated the required political will for clear action on this subject. And the next thing that happened was that GIZ, or GTZ as it was then, supported AMCOW in the development of an interim system. And this system was in use from 2011 and 2015 and was used to help produce 3 status reports. But with the expiration of the MDGs and subsequent introduction to more comprehensive SDGs, AMCOW felt it was time to review and update this system. And this was the reason that AMCOW launched the current project on establishment of a monitoring and reporting system for the water sector in Africa. And it's being implemented, we're supporting the implementation at UNEP-DHI on behalf of AMCOW, of course. And the project started in late 2015 and is scheduled to finish at the end of this year. The expected outcomes in brief are the preparation of a continent-wide harmonized and web-based reporting system on the state of water development, management and use. And this web-based part of this initiative is actually quite innovative compared to what was used earlier. Of course, you know, using the web for all kinds of reporting and information exchange is nothing new, but compared to the previous system, which was based on Word documents and people copying and pasting from various Word documents and exchanging those, this should be a lot easier. And it also has some other facets to it which makes it extraordinarily interesting, but I'll come back to those in a short while. The second expected outcome was preparation of the first consolidated annual report on water and sanitation by AMCOW Secretariat using this system, and that should be available to the African Union Summit in early 2017 if everything goes according to plan. So far, things are looking good. And finally, the last expected outcome, or main one, was strengthening the information management and monitoring capabilities, not only at national and sub-regional levels, but also at this Pan-African level in terms of AMCOW Secretariat and the African Union. So the proposed monitoring and evaluation framework covers 7 thematic areas of water sector development, management and use. And this framework is based around country-defined themes and related sub-themes, including 35 targets and 40 indicators. And I'm not going to take you through all these in detail, these 7 theme slides, due to time limitations, but I am going to show them to you here, and the thinking behind this is that you'll be able to look at the recording at your leisure and spool back and forth as you like and have a look at what's being planned. And of course any comments you have on what's shown here would be very welcome. And please note the disclaimer from that last slide about this work being work in progress that is currently under stakeholder consultation and subject to change. So here we have the third theme, which is clearly directly relates to SDG targets 6, 1, 2 and 3. I'll be talking a little bit how these SDGs are incorporated into this system in a few slides' time. But also here you can see that this one relates to climate change and disaster risk reduction. And as is the case for the SDGs, there's work to do on all kinds of things, such as agreeing on harmonizing baselines, establishing those what could be the reporting periods, and so on. Next up is governance in institutions, which of course is another major addition in comparison to the SDGs. Then penultimately we have financing in pricing, and pricing of course very important for getting the job done. And finally we have information management and capacity development, which are obviously important or of direct relevance to this monitoring system, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that as well in a few slides' time. So as I mentioned, this Pan-African monitoring and evaluation system will use the web-based IT platform where countries can upload and manage their own monitoring and evaluation data online. And quite importantly, AMCAO has decided that this data will be made accessible to anyone with internet access. What you can see here is just a mock-up of how the end user might browse this system, but we're planning on it looking like something like this, at least right now at the moment. It was clear from the beginning that the SDGs would play a major role in the development and shaping of this revised monitoring and evaluation system, and they've all been included here, or the relevant ones. Avoiding duplication of the work was an important criteria. As mentioned before, monitoring capacity is low in many countries, that's recognized, and AMCAO wants to minimize the burden of monitoring, or rather reporting, on these countries. Hence, we in AMCAO decided to adopt the indicators from the SDGs directly wherever relevant and possible. So our proposed system for AMCAO, which is still a work in progress, as mentioned, contains those 35 indicators, 35 targets and 40 indicators. Of these 40 indicators, 19 are direct copies of SDG indicators, and 8 have been modified slightly, perhaps in the wording, so where disasters are mentioned, they're called water-related disasters where relevant for the African context, and 13 are specifically unique to the African context and are not part of the SDGs. So when we look at the proposed AMCAO system and compare it with the SDG framework, we find that all the indicators under Goal 6 have been adopted, plus some from Goal 7, 11 and 13. So in terms of the challenges, as the slide says here, monitoring and evaluation in itself doesn't change the situation on the ground alone. As Peter referred to in his slide, it's just the first step along the way, and perhaps the easiest to perform. But public access to performance data may also serve to create a pressure to deliver, and this is something that AMCAO actually welcomes, as well as the African Ministers' Council on Water Secretariat. So they're very much open to a transparent system. Regarding the dilemma mentioned here, there's a challenge in hitting the right balance between trying to keep things simple and operational and providing the information that these stakeholders are going to require. And this is a dilemma that's arisen from the various stakeholder workshops. So I think the point that's come back to time and time again in the workshops in order to kind of rein in expectations is that the indicators are supposed to indicate the real situation, but not perhaps give all the nitty-gritty details. During the implementation of the project, we've heard time and time again that countries are already overburdened with existing requirements for monitoring and reporting and monitoring and evaluation. And therefore, a successful, sustainable implementation of the proposed system requires a significant and sustained effort to strengthen capacities. And AMCOW is hoping to be able to raise funds and support such capacity building, but really right now they're focusing on trying to get the system in place and getting some experiences so there's something to show for these efforts. In terms of timeline and next steps, the stakeholder consultation process has been ongoing for some months now, but is due to conclude in the next couple of weeks. And the aim of this process is to find out what countries think about the interim system, what improvements they want to have, and what constraints they have in terms of capacity. And in terms of consultations, it's probably worth saying that, you know, they've been very broad. Of course, as mentioned, there's been a number of stakeholder workshops, but we've also used questionnaire-based surveys in order to reach out to a broader group of stakeholders who perhaps don't have the ability to join in these smaller groups and discussions. So the situation right now is that we've proposed a list of 10 test countries to AMCOW, and they're currently evaluating that list, so I'm not able to share it with you here and now in this presentation, but that's almost in place. And then there will be a capacity building plan, and this will be the pivotal point for AMCOW's follow-up on this project, and that will be something that will be drafted for between June and September, so a September deadline. And then the final point on here is that, of course, as mentioned earlier, we're going to be analysing the data and help to prepare the report for that AU summit, which will actually take place in January 2017. So that's all I had to say about the AMCOW system and the small but important innovations which are being applied there to improve the situation regarding monitoring, reporting, data sharing, etc. So I can see I'll plow on. I can see that there's been a few questions coming in, and I'll take those one by one. Yeah, the first one, what is being done for the SDGs with no specific targets in the African system? That's right. Some of the SDGs don't contain a quantitative target. So, for example, the one on 6.4 says by 2030 substantially increase water use efficiency. For the Pan-African system, each country will set their own quantitative targets, which may differ between countries, recognizing that countries have different natural and social economic conditions. Next question is, do countries report their SDG status through this system? No, as Peter mentioned, that goes through the statistical representatives in the national governments, but it also has a yes part, because beyond this global system, countries will be able to simply report the results of their monitoring through this Pan-African system. And it's basically a final data reporting to two different audiences for purposes that in some cases will be similar and others will be quite different. And the next question is, what are the plans for further capacity development? Well, as mentioned, during the project, there will be testing and training in those 10 countries, and that's going to be followed up with training as part of the full-scale rollout between August and September. A number of tools are going to be used for this rollout, including we're looking at web-based training and video assistance to be made available online. And also, as mentioned, a plan for longer-term capacity building will be developed between June and September. But, of course, thoughts about the various options are already being discussed and explored, and if anyone on this call has some good ideas they'd like to share, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Henrik. So if you Give me a moment now. I will just switch my screens. I will ask Maija to let me know when you can see. Does that look good, Maija? Yes, I'm getting the thumbs up there. Maybe I have to click on this to get rid of those icons. So I think I'm looking at the time, and we're running out of time to take on any more questions. But if you have any burning issues, please send them to either the people who presented to their email addresses, or to Maija or myself, and we'll do our best to make sure that you get a good response. And we're always looking to improve the quality of our work, so we'd be very grateful if you could use a couple of minutes to fill in the feedback survey form that we're going to be sending you automatically after this webinar ends. As mentioned, this is the first of 6 webinars. Further information on dates, times and details will be made available from our website. At the moment we have June the 8th, I believe, penciled in as a tentative date for the next one on Earth observations. But don't worry, we'll send you a mail to remind you a little bit nearer the time in case you'd like to join. So please allow me to conclude by thanking both today's presenters and you, the participants, for taking the time to join us. We wish you all a very good morning, afternoon and evening. Thank you very much.